welcome back to On the Workbench. Today we're taking a look at my table saw extension wing that is a Craftsman router table and how I have this built into my table saw. So I've got the Porter Cable PCB 270TS table saw that I've had for a while now, and one of the things I thought was interesting here was how far out the rails went, and they went beyond the actual built-in stamped aluminum wing, and so I had this extra space for where my fence rails were, and I could easily fit something inside here. And so I went looking around and found that Craftsman used to actually sell a kit that was labeled a Craftsman Professional as a table saw insert for their router. So I bought that kit and adapted it here onto my table saw. A couple of things here. So this kit actually included the router table itself here, a series of insert rings here of different sizes. These are grooves actually for a fence. I'll show you the fence here in a little bit. And then it also came with a aluminum extension piece here and an aluminum extension piece on the other side. So then I was able to fit the extension piece here inside of my the fence rail in the front. And then on the back side, I had to actually end up, and let's see if you can see this here on camera, to be able to fit the gap between my back rail from the table saw and the extra piece of this aluminum extension here that came with the kit. I had to add a few washers to the bolt here to be able to get that to be lined up right. I have had a few troubles of trying to get this actually square and level with the back side here of the table saw extension. I probably need to do a few more adjustments. It's not been that big of a deal. Very rarely am I actually working on that side of the router behind the bit. It's also just a nice little reminder that I should be working on this side and working in this direction rather than working on the other side of the bit there. So it's a little bit, it's not quite flush. I'd like to be able to fix that. I haven't, but it just hasn't been that big of a priority. There's also a scale here for a router. There's also a small threaded bit here if I want a little guide here that I could place a piece of material up when I go across. I've got that unscrewed here because otherwise my table saw fence couldn't slide across here. And so right now I've got a standard 1/4-inch roundover bit sitting in my router there, so it's easy that I can just raise it up and be ready to go with a 1/4-inch roundover, which is my most commonly used router bit. And then on the one adaptation I had to make on the back side here was then I had to drill 2 holes to be able to get these bolts in to be able to connect the router table into the back side of the fence. And so I had to make a small couple adjustments to make that work. But it really wasn't that big of a deal other than just squaring up and drilling a couple holes. And it's worked quite well for me. So then underneath this router table here, I've got my Craftsman Professional router that then is wired in. I ended up cutting down the cord here. You can kind of see where I've got into the safety switch here, where then that is just wired. I put a new plug on the end there so it fits nice and tidy. I ordered a replacement cable here from Sears Parts Direct with no problem. So if I want to pull this router out of the table, I can do that here. If I want under the saw data dust collection, there is a dust port here on the side of the router. You can look more about on that router, and there's a little adapter you can plug in an 1/4-inch, an 1 1/4-inch vacuum hose to be able to make that work. One issue I did have with mounting this router to the router table was the place where I could then theoretically control the router height from the top. That there are none of the little openings up here that line up where I can have a key that goes straight down into my fixed router base to be able to manually adjust that, to be able to adjust on the top of the table. So if I need to make any fine adjustments to my router bit, I've got to come down, and then the way I've got it mounted here, my fine adjustment here is right in front. So I can open the latch here on the side, and then I can adjust the screw up or down to make a fine adjustment for my height. Not a big deal, but I know for some folks they want the on top control. But for me, just be able to reach under here and grab that, no big deal. There's also the included safety switch here, and there's also the pull-out key. I always leave that in because my safety policy around the shop is unless I'm using it, I try to make sure all my important tools or dangerous tools are always unplugged, and you gotta do something to be able to plug them in to be able to make them dangerous. So it requires some active work to actually hurt yourself. I don't have any little ones running around, or they're capable of running around the shop, and my wife generally stays away from all my tools because she knows they're dangerous. I don't really have to worry about a little one figuring out how to plug this in, but if that applies to you, then by all means you might need to consider doing something else with safety switches and cutoff switches, or come up with a way to lock out your electricity in your garage shop. So then the fence that this comes with is a plastic fence, and the fence at the bottom has a couple little yellow, one yellow runner and one black runner. Have to slide into these grooves, and I'd have to take it apart here. There's a knob on the back here I'd use to be able to then latch it in, so it won't sit flush right now because of the bolt head. Won't sit square in the track. But you can get the idea here. Then there's a dust collection port in the back, so then that connects to a 2.5-inch dust collection or shot back hose on the back side. There's a blade guard cover here, and with the blade guard, the way that this is covered, you can see again to reinforce that direction of travel as being from the right to the left, just based on which way that this is naturally grooved. It also came with a miter gauge that looks like this, that can then ride in the rails here for being able to make other cuts. It also has this extra piece here, so then if I need to sand something on its edge, I can put it between here, and then be able to tighten up this wing nut and then push it across the router bit. So if I need to route something on end grain, for example, if you're doing a lock miter, you need to route with your piece vertically up against the fence. So it's got that as an extra piece, which I think is a nice fence. And one of the other best parts of this, if the sticker is correct, but this fence is apparently made in the USA. It's labeled as Craftsman Professional. This is the kit that I have is no longer sold in stores, but one of the things I've noticed recently is if you look at some of the Bosch router tables, they actually have where the ends are squared off. And so then if you needed to make your own adapter on the end here, as long as your router table has a square end, some of the newer Craftsman ones here have a sloped edge on the side that you would not be able to get a spacer, build a spacer to make it fit into a table saw. So you might want to check out some of the Bosch router tables. In general, at least as far as I'm aware, most of the Craftsman routers were actually originally built by Bosch. So there's a good chance that this, even though it's labeled Craftsman, is actually really a Bosch manufactured product. I can't say for certain, but it seems like most of the Craftsman routers are actually Bosch tools on the inside. So I hope you found this interesting. I'll put a link below to the part number that I use for this kit, and hope you have a great day. Bye.